back, everybody. Let's get right to our next presenter. We're going to have a wonderful talk right about now about My Cups Are Half Full, an ND's journey with breast cancer with Dr. Molly Niedermeyer. In addition to a private practice, Dr. Niedermeyer has served her community in a variety of ways. From 85 to 91, she was a distinguished faculty member at Bastyr, serving as Dean of Naturopathic Medicine and Chair of the Midwifery Department. From 87 to 93, she was on the board of the Midwives Association of Washington State. She served as treasurer of WAMP. She continues to teach as a guest instructor at Bastyr and was recently honored as one of Seattle's top doctors. She's been featured on the Naturopathic Perspective, a Bastyr-produced television production. This lecture is going to draw on Dr. Molly's personal experience with breast cancer, as well as her in-clinic protocols, and she'll be covering diagnostic testing, hormonal imbalance, and a whole host of other things. And she'll be joining the Grand Rounds tomorrow afternoon and hosting a table on all things pediatric. Please join me in a warm welcome for Dr. Molly Niedermeyer.
Hi. First thing, I'm going to promote this convention as my favorite convention, and that I want you to know that you should sit with people you don't know at lunch. That's my naturopathic perspective. And if anybody has an extra lunch ticket, my resident could use it. So, so let's just go on with this. Okay, let's see. So being a faculty member at Bastyr, I actually have learning objectives. This is what I want you to walk out of here. I'm a very pragmatic physician. Many of the Canadian physicians know that about me. So I want you to apply your naturopathic principles to the treatment of women with breast cancer and extrapolate to other manifestations of cancer. This is not just about breast cancer. I will say that I was sharing with some other people this morning that after I wrote my lecture and looked at it, there's not one supplement in this lecture. Okay, we're going to talk about breast cancer without pills. Okay, so I just want to let you know that. To prevent practical guidelines for primary care physician and the deliverance of comprehensive health care to oncology patients or clients, to share my ongoing personal journey so far, to spark new insights from a physician's perspective. I think that's what I have to bring to you, is that you need to hear from my eyes to you what it's like to travel through this journey so that you can learn about your own clients' patients. So when I was a young doctor, we were taught that we were not allowed to treat cancer. That is still true legally. You cannot treat cancer. We do not treat disease anyway, we treat the person. And that we have to refer to an oncologist for them to have a treatment of one of the conventional medicine. I think that Jared alluded to this, when somebody's kid is going to be taken away from them because they're not following conventional treatment. I just want you to know that, so that I refer everybody to an oncologist for chemo, radiation, surgery, and then when they decline, I chart it. Done. Okay, but cover yourself. That's what you need to do. And I would like to, at this point, to distinguish when I talk about a patient or a client in oncology is really a good place to discuss this. So most of my clients are clients. What that means to me is that most of my clients are people who are paying me to give them their advice. So that's, therapists have clients, lawyers have clients, Molly has clients. A patient to me is somebody who trusts you to such an extent that they give their personal decision-making process over to you because they can't possibly make that decision. So we have patients as well. So I'll talk about my journey of both of those things, but I distinguish those things because there's moments when I step into that role where my patients are my patients and I agree to make decisions for them because they're so stressed out they can't make it, and there's times when I'm really doing docera and teaching and helping them make a decision. That's how I distinguish it. The therapeutic relationship that I have with my clients is imperative, and I choose people. I think it was Les Griffiths. This is what the Northwest Convention does for me. It pulls everything together. So Les Griffiths this morning and I were talking about doing births, and it's the most intimate thing we've ever done in our lives. But us as physicians in primary care are really intimate with our patients. And the definition of intimacy that I got from my therapist through this, which I really loved and wanted to share, is transparency and access. Pretty cool definition of intimacy. So that's a pearl I'm giving you, okay? I'll tell you when. That's a pearl. So my story, first thing I want you to know that I cried when I wrote this lecture, and I'm going to try to get through this without crying. I think you need to know that I'm 5 years from treatment. I finished my last radiation in April of 2012, and although I'm still in treatment, so let me tell you that too. So anyway, and I cried when I wrote this lecture. I was bawling, and I need you to know that every one of your clients that's gone through something of this extreme has their protective chi ripped away from them. My resilience is down, okay? So we all look fine. I mean, I look better than I probably looked in years, and still at a scale of 1 to 10, I would put myself at a 5. Now, my 5 is most people's 8s, and I know that. But I'm telling you I'm in a 5. You know, if I eat too much sugar, I'm in tears because my adrenal glands are shot, okay? So I had annual thermography, so this other thing I'm telling you, annual thermographies that showed a stable lesion in my left breast. I had a negative mammogram in October 2010. This is interesting, so these are other pearls. I had my first cavity in my life in December 2010. And I get regular dental care every 3 months. So September 2010, no cavities. December 2010, such a large cavity that my naturopathic dentist, Don Blair, was thinking of putting on a crown. I've never had a cavity in my life. Okay, so next, so this is where we are in denial. I had routine blood work in January. I had ferritin levels over 400. So these are some of the things I want you to think about. I thought the ferritin level was from my cavity. I didn't ask where my cavity came from. There's the naturopathic I missed. It's hard because who do I go see, right? I mean, I do have doctors, but all my elders, the people I used to see, are no longer with us on this earth. So anyway, so that's where I screwed up. Where did I, okay, the ferritin levels are high from the cavity, but where did the cavity come from? So I just want you to know that. In April, I found an unusual thickening in my breast. I do normal breast exams, so there wasn't one in March, and in April of 2011, I found a thickening. Asked my husband about it. We're all in denial. He said, that always feels that way. It felt like a premenopausal, did not feel like breast cancer like all you guys were taught. It felt like fibrocystic breasts of a thick menstruating woman, but I was postmenopausal and didn't put 2 and 2 together. It also was right after Fukushima hit the West Coast. So I want you to know that we got the radiation wave. I don't know if any of you noticed it, but I had so many more hormonal problems in my practice at that time, and that's what I think sped it up. So I went to get my annual thermography in July of 2011. It was normal, but I asked the doctor to feel my breast because I had a concern. And you know that. The minute someone feels your breast and they go, or whatever they're doing, they go, oh, Molly. Like whammo, I knew right away. Like that's what I needed to get me out of my own denial. And I went and got an ultrasound. On the ultrasound, you could see enlarged lymphatics. They were not palpable. Okay. So I agreed to a breast biopsy on August 3rd and was diagnosed with stage 3B breast cancer. Very aggressive. Like not in him of 10. I mean, like one of the most aggressive things I've seen. So in September, I had a total mastectomy. During the AAMP conference that was going on in Arizona, my tribe prayed for me during my surgery, and I didn't know that, but I refused to get wheeled into the surgery suite. I actually walked in, and in the corner was Bill Mitchell and Bastier were sitting there with white coats on. I saw them, and I just went. And I also lay down on the table listening to Dave Matthews, who's a friend of mine, because that's what the surgeon listens to. I felt enveloped, so I'm going to tell you that. On September 17th, I got a port put in. I love my port. Okay, I have very bad blood vessels, so having a port was great. And what I came away with is I go big or go home. I was ER positive, PR positive, grade 3B, 2 lesions, 4 centimeters. I had a 4 centimeter mass that I felt that was not there in March. Okay, so I want you to know, negative mammogram, negative thermography, 4 centimeter lesion all in 1 month. My treatment choice was 4 rounds of AC, 12 rounds of Taxol, 36 treatments of 13 to 15 minutes of radiation, which I have the most treatment I've ever seen any of my clients ever get, except for one woman who passed. And now I'm supposedly on 8 to 10 years of aromatase inhibitors, maybe, and I'll tell you why maybe. That's the treatment cost. So this is what I really wanted you to get. I think breast cancer is totally a toxic disease. Kind of goes on with what Jared was saying. It's a physical, emotional, spiritual toxicity. So our hormones travel through our bodies because they're the messengers that travel, and we're more exposed to those toxicities than any other element in our body. And they get easily poisoned. So our immune systems are overwhelmed by life, our genetics, and learned ability to deal with congestion. All health is, all pain is congestion. I was thinking about what somebody else you said, Jared. Health is freedom from limitations, and so sometimes the healthiest thing is to die if you're limited. So I guess, naturopath's philosophy is what saves us. So I think of the breast tissue as having lots of docs that has more docs in breast tissue than it does in the ovaries or the uterus or the intestinal tract. There's a lot of estrogen binders. Our estrogens do not cause our breast cancer. We are not having breast cancer from estrogens. Okay, I just need you to know that. It's just that those estrogens were poisoned over time and parked their boats in my docs on my breast tissue. So I need you to understand that. So therefore, our breast takes the brunt of the exposure. It's the wiser choice of the body. The body will always choose the least harmful thing on a moment-to-moment basis. The least harmful thing. She is making, or he is making, the best choice they can on a moment-to-moment basis, given our resources. So they park the docs in my breast tissue, and it got overwhelmed. The side is not random either. My left breast is the feminine side, my right is your masculine, so the choice of location is also not random. So my resident brought me, I just turned 60. I wear 60 well. And she bought me a t-shirt that says, "Nothing is random," and on the back it says, "Find the cause at Emerald City Clinic." So I just, nothing is random. I would put a big sign in front of my office, but I think I'm on a very busy street and cause accidents. That would not be random. So it has implications for how you treat somebody because nothing is random. My choice of a 3B breast cancer in my left breast, blah, 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 is not random, and it's my job to unravel that, to figure out why my body chose that and how I could, arrange to do differently. So as I said, the body's ultimately wise. The questions when you get diagnosed, your clients will immediately, or patients will immediately ask, why me? I don't know anybody that doesn't cross that. I'm really going to try to give you guidance as a primary care physician about how to mitigate, like how to put things in order so people aren't overwhelmed, how to navigate all this, and how to remain honest and hopeful. That's a really hard job that we do. How you are being honest. These prognoses, I don't know if you saw that there's a new cardiologist that came out with a book about how she, as a resident, heard somebody, I love this story, she, as a resident, heard somebody who was, the rounds were going around and the patient was really, really healthy, and they thought she was going to totally recover, but she heard that she had a TIA, and she thought it was a terminal illness and died within 3 days. And the next person she saw a few years later had a wholesome gallop, which is, if anybody does cardiology, knows that that's a really significantly deadly prognosis, and he got better because he thought he was healthy. So I'm going to talk about some of the things I heard from my colleagues during the course of this cancer thing and telling you, please think about what you say to somebody, okay? If health is free from limitations, and what limitations, at what moments can we help our clients with first? So crisis management first, diagnosis first. Don't start going into the whys. When your cortisol levels are up, it causes vasoconstriction of your peripheral blood system. You all know that. That causes constriction of the temporal lobes. A patient with a cancer diagnosis is not critically thinking. They're limbic. And in limbic systems, you can only fight or retreat. Okay? That's your only physiological choice. So just think about that as a physician. So my Hippocratic Oath, if I rewrote it, is to support the physical body while you evolve emotionally and spiritually. That's my personal Hippocratic Oath. I always address the physical, emotional, and spiritual needs, but realize the patient's being poisoned to get the cancer faster than them, so survival is more important in the scheme of things. So I chose, you can't believe how many times I got 3 copies of that book, There Is a Cure for Cancer. Have you seen that book? Like you only can do mushrooms, right, or something like that. But anyway, I chose to do allopathic approaches because I felt like in my life, I didn't have anything in my bag that would do what I needed to do as rapidly as I needed to do as a mother of 2 and blah, blah, blah. So I just supplied allopathic poisons in a naturopathic perspective. I mean, that's how I did it. So, and through all this, so I'm going to talk about some of the other things that go on. Emotionally, because I think that a lot of women live by sheer determination, dragging their physical body behind them. That's my first line in my book, My Cups Are Half Full. I'm going to repeat that. Women live by sheer determination, dragging their physical bodies behind them. That's our role in the culture. Okay? It's true. So how many women you say, on a scale of 1 to 10, how you feel? And they say 9, and they look at their cortisol levels and they're 3, and I'll say, great, my job is to get the 3 up to your 9, not to draw your 9 back to your 3. But, so, the difficulties that I had in my personal relationship were phenomenal, and we're still working it on. And that's why I said, I asked my oncologist 3 years after treatment why he didn't warn me of the difficulties. And he said, because I was nearly killing you and didn't want to say you can end up being divorced. We're not divorced, but it's a really difficult travel. Because if the woman's over-functioning and filling in that space, and now she can't do it anymore, then and the game's changed and your partner isn't been informed of that, it becomes difficult. So spiritually, I always encourage a deep personal relationship with the patient's spiritual or god or goddesses, or a framework to put this in. I have been so grateful I'm not grateful for cancer. You're never going to hear me say I'm always grateful for cancer. I'm not in that category. But I am grateful for the lessons that I've been learning. That's different. Okay? So I wish that I had learned the lessons without the kind of toxicity I had to go through to learn those lessons. So that's my goal. So lesson 1, diagnosis. Dr. Bastyr always said to tell your clients what to expect and then to take credit. I don't know if you remember him telling us that, but he used to say it. In the case of cancer diagnosis, it really helps if you lay out for your patient what to expect. They don't do this very well in oncology. They don't tell you what to expect. And I learned a lot of my techniques in birthing. I'm never going to equate, I have a chapter in my book I'm writing on what I learned as a birth attendant and a laboring mom that I can use as a skill set for someone going through cancer. But one of the things as a birth attendant is one of the things that really works for women in labor is give them options. They don't feel trapped. You know, we could do this, they could, right? So steps to diagnosis. You have a suspicion of something, learned long ago. If you can't diagnose it, then don't give the final answer. So, story number 1. Primary care. Remember, I do primary care. So I was at a birth. I attended a woman in labor. The baby was born. It looked very much like it had Down syndrome. It had simian rings and low-lobed ears and blah, blah, blah. I went out of the bedroom I was in called Children's Hospital and said, I think I have a baby with Downs. They said, well, is it nursing? Fine. Is the heart rate? Blah, blah, blah. Fine. Then don't worry about it, Molly. Go do the 24-hour visit and check. Why tell the parents who just had this normal baby and a wonderful birth, why do anything like that? I went back the next day. I don't usually do my 24-hour checks. I had students that did that, but I did this 24-hour check. The baby still looked like it had Downs. The concern for Downs is cardiac abnormalities. That's really the concern. Babies that have bad cardiac abnormalities don't nurse well. This baby was nursing well. I decided to wait and let them still bond with this baby. They come in 1 week later, and the baby still looks like it has Downs. So I finally say to them, they say, what are you concerned about? I said, I think this baby has Downs. And the father grabbed the baby, ran out the door, and never returned. Now, I'll tell you why. Because what I learned from this, from David Springer, who's a pediatrician in the Seattle area, who's no longer with us, he said, Molly, unless you can do the final diagnosis, you should not give that diagnosis. Your diagnosis should be, I have some concerns about this baby and I've arranged for some genetic workup. And leave the bad news to the people that can actually give the diagnosis. So I thought I'd pass that on. Pro number 2, okay? If you can't do the diagnosis, then don't tell the patient. Follow up on diagnosis. So when I'm talking about, I think I'm suspicious that there's something here, these are our choices, you know, they're going to think cancer. Of course they're going to think cancer. I mean, how many people come? I have people all the time that say, well, my eyes are going blurry and I probably have a tumor. I said, you know, cancer doesn't come and go. You know, it's like you drink water and it goes away. That's pretty well tells me that it's not a tumor, right? You have those clients out there all concerned about cancer, right? So cancer normally requires a biopsy. So that's story number 3. Bill Mitchell told me in my second year at Bastyr that it really affected me. He had a client who had a sarcoma. Do you remember these stories? Had a sarcoma, osteosarcoma in the leg. And it was totally contained. The body had contained it. And Bill feels terrible because he went to get her to get a biopsy and then it metastasized. He feels like the body had done what it needed to do and it may not be shrinking, but it had contained it, and that he was the cause of that woman's death. He took that, I mean, he always felt bad. So I took that lesson and found out that if you put your clients on fractionated pectin before any biopsy, you prevent metastases. So when I have a first office call, I have a handout that says fractionated pectin, modified fruit pectin for the use of, I know this is not important to you, but I want it in your head that if you go anywhere for a biopsy for any reason, a colonoscopy, a dermatology visit, whatever, be on fractionated pectin. You just need to be on before the biopsy. It just needs to be in the system before the biopsy. And it's 500 milligrams TID, and you stay on it. There's a supplement. I'm sorry. But you know, we all got apples today. An apple a day keeps the doctor away. There is reasons for these things. I could write an entire book on, scares the shit out of you. And, all these things have reasons. Okay? So fractionated pectin, wonderful product. You stay on it till the biopsy comes back negative, or I keep people on, especially with the kind of cancer I had. I was on for 2 years. Okay? So please. Also biopsies. Oh, a biopsy. We're going to get a biopsy. Please warn them. A breast biopsy for me was 6 to 8 pokes with a 16-gauge needle. That breast looks like hamburger meat when you're done. Do you know this? I don't know if you've ever seen this. So you better send them with Lena and Annika, and you should warn them. It is not, it hurts like hell. Okay? And, did I talk about this? Okay, the other thing that I want to tell you is that often when you have a biopsy, what do when we want to go back and look at it? They stick a titanium implant. And the woman goes in for a biopsy, and she signs away that they allow her to put a marker in there. The marker is a titanium implant. Why in the hell would you stick a titanium implant in this plastic cell area and make it more toxic? Do not let your clients have that titanium implant. Do you know this? These are the things I'm trying to get you to understand as a primary care physician, that your clients going in for breast biopsies are being signing away a waiver to have a marker. And they go, yeah, a marker, that sounds great. But why would you stick a toxic metal next to breast tissue that you already are suspicious of? Okay, there's another one. Are you writing these down? These are the ones I'm telling you, pay attention. Fractionated pectin, titanium implants, okay. Now you're asking the question, do you have cancer or not? If yes, there'll be further staging for any treatment design. Lay out the steps, let them know. So I got diagnosed on August 3rd, and I had surgery by September 11th because I knew exactly what I needed. I was on the phone, I got everything ordered I needed to have because I don't want to wait. Most women that find out they have breast cancer, they want to do something about it, okay? So the first thing I actually have a resident in my office. I didn't think I was going to do oncology, but it's part of life. I really didn't want to do oncology. I'm doing a lot of oncology. But I have a resident in my practice that likes oncology, and I don't send anybody to any oncology appointment without an advocate from my office. No charge. They learn. So you can find a student, they learn, and I've got somebody who's taking notes and listening and I'm represented in that office. So I call and I say, I suspect Mary to have breast cancer, the biopsies come back positive, okay, can we get a breast MRI scheduled, can we get a, blah, blah. They're all scheduled for them so that I hand it to them because they're not even thinking. The amount of appointments you have the first 2 weeks is astronomical in the sense that you're also dealing with the fact that someone's giving you a diagnosis. So the breast MRI is gadolinium, and so it's an imaging that the first thing you want to do, and so you need to think about that toxicity right then and there. So everybody's on chlorella, everybody's getting Epsom salts back. The Mitchell family bought me 100-pound boxes of Epsom salts that would arrive to my door every 2 months. I would go through 100 pounds of Epsom salts every 2 months. Every day I took an Epsom salts bath. Okay? And it was on chlorella. Then you get a PET CT scan. So this is interesting. The PET CT scan is attached to sugar. Okay? Americans, Westerners and their sugar diet. Sugar goes first to the brain, then to the heart, then to the muscle, then to cancer. Every time we eat refined sugar, if there's any cancer cells in your body, because they're fast-growing, they're as fast-growing as all those organs. So sugar is probably one of our biggest toxic things out there. It feeds the cancer. And if you sit there watching this PET CT scan on sugar, you watch where all the cancer is, but it goes to your brain first. So all chemotherapy is on the back of a brain, on the back of a sugar molecule. They're finally admitting chemo brain is really real. It's not just a figment of our imagination. If my brain is taking the sugar from all the taxane and intramucin and cytoxin I had, no wonder I have inflammation of the brain. Okay? I'm 5 years from treatment. I can tell you that my brain is probably 80% back, but it took that long. Okay? Now, my clients joke that my brain on chemo is better than most people's brains not on chemo, so they were happy with me going back to work. And so I recommend a breast MRI. I do recommend a PET CT scan. I do recommend a bone scan. The bones do not, it's a specific treatment. The PET CT scan cannot tell you whether a breast cancer is metastasized to bone. They then recommend a brain scan. Forget it. If it's in the brain, you do a test to relieve anxiety or change your therapeutic regime. I'm going to repeat that one. You do a test to relieve anxiety or change your therapeutic regime. Okay, if I have brain cancer, I'm not doing any of this, and I'm not going to poison my brain. So I declined that. And then things I think about later is genetic screening. I did 23andMe this year. I didn't do it at the time because it's not going to change my treatment protocol. What's interesting is I did do the BRCA. The BRCA is copyrighted, which is why it's not on the 23andMe. Did you know that? That's why you can't get it on a 23andMe. is because they've copyrighted it. And because I had to prove to I had to get my father to admit that I was 25% Jewish, that my insurance would cover this $2,500, $3,000 test, which then protects all the women in my family, so that's why I did it. But I had to convince my Catholic father that he was 25% Jewish and he had to admit it. Yeah. Okay, so let's see if I can do this escape. So I just want to show you, I'm giving you handouts. Okay. Let's see. Open. I'm not the most technologically advanced individual. This handout I made right after I got diagnosed. It's really useful. Okay, I didn't see it on your notes, even though I was told they were there. I know they're on the Google Doc and on the Northwest Convention website. This is what I did in 2012 to compare all the imaging. Okay, because people ask you all the time, should I get a mammogram? You're going to all ask me, well, what do you think, Molly? Okay, so I know that. It's like what you do when you teach immunizations to your families. They'll say, well, did you immunize your children? Right? Don't they ask those questions? So I just want to let you know that that's there. Okay. Let's see, close. Okay. All right, how do I close it, you guys? F5? Nope, that doesn't do it. Okay. I'm trying to be. Okay. You didn't tell me that. F4? Alt F4. Okay, great. All right. And then I have a fractionated pectin handout that you're welcome to have. That's what it's there for. Okay? Okay. And then F5 back here. Oh, wait a minute. I will get to it. Okay. So now there is cancer. At this point, you need an oncologist if you have not already gotten one. I recommend that once you have a pathology report and all the staging, you recommend a few consultations. Help with the scheduling. I had 3 oncology appointments. All 3 oncologists in the city of Seattle gave me diametrically opposed advice. I'm just telling you that. Wow, it's not a rocket. They don't have a set science. Okay? You need to know that. So, why I chose the oncologist I chose is because one oncology team wanted to have me do chemo ahead of time to see if it was working on me and then have the surgery. That didn't feel right to me under my circumstances because I didn't want to go into major surgery having been weakened by chemotherapy drugs. So that's why I made my choice. But more importantly, my oncologist, who I adore, who I've worked with for a long time, when I called him on my cell phone, he called me back on my cell phone and said, is this about you, Molly? And I said, yes. And he said, come in tonight. So I went in with my husband and Roberta Mitchell, who's my best friend, at 8 o'clock on a Friday night when Swedish was closed with his arms up like this and said, come to me, so I could start crying. So that's why I went with him. Because who am I going to feel the safest with? This is all about safety. Okay? And he's brilliant. Anybody would want to be a fly on the wall, because I argue with him all the time. So, have a serious talk about that person stopping work. What does that look like for them? The first advice I got was from Pamela Snyder. I need to honor her, who said, Molly, you can only heal in parasympathetic. That made a lot of sense to me. I walked off the job. That doesn't make sense to your clients. I don't understand that. So I'm just going to tell you. I always am explaining parasympathetic, sympathetic to my clients. But to me, that was the key. That was the language I needed to hear. Now, many people have to continue working because that's how they maintain their insurance. I did not have to. But you need to understand that. You can only heal in parasympathetic. I was sitting in chemo wards, 80 people a day, 7 days a week, many of them coming in their lunch hour. That's how many women had, and 90% of them breast cancer. 1 out of 5 women in this room will have breast cancer. That's how toxic the world is. So I was horrified by all these people having to go back to work. Anyway. So it reminds me of my postpartum and seriously having discussions with people postpartum about what are you going back to work for? You just had a baby, right? Number 3, get them a handicap placard. Nobody ever tells you that. Write
write the paperwork to give them a handicap so they don't have to walk in the rain, that they can, it's already too expensive. Parking at Swedish was $20 a day. I had a handicap. I could park anywhere. I saved that money. Write them a handicap placard. Okay, you can do that. No oncologist ever recommends it. Mention disability to them. No one told me I had private disability, which is what paid for me, but Social Security disability in the United States kicked in for me, and that's what I'm still living on. Okay? No one talks to you about it. So you're the primary care. Help their financial stress so they don't have to work. Okay? And then set up a Caring Bridge site immediately. So Caring Bridge is an organization. I really recommend you go to Dr. Molly Linton, that was my name at the time, at caringbridge.org, and my journey is all there. And I actually give that link to my clients, but tell them not to read ahead. Do not let them read ahead. You'll see when you see my radiation pictures. You want them to read where I'm at the time. Okay, so it's a really good resource. And Caring Bridge, you don't want to, you want all the support, but you don't want all the phone calls. So I got up every morning and read all your love letters. I had like 50,000 hits on my Caring Bridge, and I could get up and read all the support and not feel responsible to answer the phone. Okay? Really important. Educate yourself as a physician about the diagnosis and coordinate with your oncologist. Do not be afraid to ask any questions. I tell people all the time, I will call the pharmacist and say, I don't know what this drug is, what is it for? Good doctors have no ego. I just said that to somebody earlier this morning. A good doctor has no ego, okay? They really don't. If I don't know what I don't know, I have no issue saying I don't know it, and I ask somebody. But the basics of this is PRER, is progesterone responsive, ER responsive, and have better outcomes than when they're negative. I'm just telling you that. Because so like Candida, a fast-growing cancer responds to chemo better than a slow-growing cancer. So you know that if you have a rhodiotortilla fungus that's growing slow, it's so hard to treat. But if it's fast-growing, you can kill it fast because the repetition is easy to deal with. HER2 positive is really much more difficult in a longer treatment. I didn't have that, grateful. Understand staging and what that means. Please, these are the basics. You don't have to be an oncology specialist in the naturopathic community to do primary care. You just need a few little ticks and understand the scoring. So we score in Seattle, it's Nottingham. I've seen scoring in other places. So how aggressive is the cancer? It's kind of like APGARs. I'm going to tell you, it's kind of like an APGAR score. An aggressive diagnosis is more easily treatable, and I said it's like fast-growing Candida. So simplify. Please simplify. The questions start flying. Why me? Try to reassure them that you will address that in the future, but right now, we just need to take care of what's in front of us. Overview. Many oncologists do not lay it out, but you must give them an overview. So there's a diagnosis, and then there'll be treatment options, and these are the major treatment options in the oncology department: surgery, chemoradiation, and concurrent and collaborative naturopathic care. Okay, what to expect. I'm telling you, 5 years out, I'm still not fully healed. So please give them that. Tell them that if you're going to go through this through this allopathic approach to oncology, it's going to take a while. And it makes a difference if someone, I don't belittle someone with a stage 1 lumpectomy with radiation, but I do know the difference between a stage 1 lumpectomy with radiation and a total mastectomy with 16 rounds of Taxol. I understand the difference. That it's going to take them a few weeks to get to a diagnosis and to a plan, okay? And that the treatment plans are the first 2 years of, I'm telling you, with someone with my diagnosis, I'm considering those first 2 years like, see, I do a lot of analogies with birthing. It's like toddlers. I've got 2 years of a lot of stuff going on, okay? And I thought I'd be back to work. I got diagnosed in August and actually told my office I'll be back to work after the chemo in January. I did not return to work for 18 months. Okay, and then I only went back to work. I just hit the 20-hour contact hours a week and really shouldn't be working that much. So I'm just letting you know. Let's see, it takes a few visits. Okay, so I meet really long with my clients about how we're going to do a naturopathic perspective. And And I check in with my clients at least once a month and I agree with Jared that most of our clients are going to do collaborative care. What I would like to say to you, in my experience with the naturopathic community, and I'm very serious about this, I think most naturopaths do shitty jobs with oncology. And the reason I think they do is because they have the perspective, and I'm not speaking to this group because if you're at the Northwest Convention, I have a great deep respect for most people who attend these conventions. Because what I got was, what can we do to mitigate those side effects? Not how can we make you healthier because of this diagnosis. There's a huge difference philosophically. My body chose to have cancer. Okay, great. I'll deal with it. And how can I learn from this and be healthier? All right? So that's different than let me get you through the poisons. Okay? So there's a 2-year recovery period. There's 2 years treatment, 2 years recovery, and then at least 1 year of detox. So the last year I've been doing, just to give you an idea, I do saunas 3 times a week. I get a colonic once a month. I think that you'll go through detox. I just did my last. My family knows when I'm dumping radiation and chemotherapy. When I have a radiation dump, which I had one again in January, my eyes burn. You feel. If you teach people how to be conscious, I know that I'm at the next layer of detox, okay? And then this year I decided to label as a prevention year, so I did a 23andMe, and I'm working on all the things that may have proned me to that, which is interesting. I have a mutation in my sulfur, which is treated by charcoal. I have always loved burnt toast. I look at all this stuff. Okay, that makes sense. Oh, that makes sense. I mean, I went back looking at ferritin. Do you know that after all the, all the musculoskeletal things and inflammation that make ferritin go down, probably 20 on the diagnostic scale is breast cancer. So I'm telling you, if you see a high ferritin level, it should be in your thought process. And where I had my cavity, on the tooth that has to do with the chest wall. It wasn't random. Lesson 2, baseline. This is the biggest lesson I want you to know. I went to see a naturopath about what kind of blood work should I get before I get chemo. And she did not tell me to get a natural killer cell, and I'm bummed as all get out. So get your baselines. I think if you know where someone starts, you know where they can go back. Please. So these are all the things I recommend for baseline. Okay? And a lot of you, an N-telepeptide, often people don't know about that test. It's a urine test that tells you rate of loss of bone. Why that's so important is because I'm on drugs that give me osteoporosis. Okay, so I want to know how much bone I'm losing before that, okay? Do not get a heavy metal test that they've already started on chemotherapy. Their kidneys are already being damaged. Do not do a provoked test on anybody who's on chemo. I sit in the chemo wards. They're serving Mountain Dew. Are you kidding me? When I was done with chemotherapy, my husband and I made a whole bunch of kale chips to give to the nurses because they all have sinusitis, dermatitis, hormonal imbalances because they're handling these toxic metal, all this toxicity. One of the other things I want you to know is that I do monthly carotid ultrasounds in my office. So if you live in the Seattle area and you want to send your clients over, I'm telling you, people die from cardiovascular disease, not from the cancer. The day I started my chemotherapy, Joan Kennedy died riding her bike in a gym in New York 5 years after her breast cancer treatment from heart disease. Okay? So it's an inflammatory process that we go through. My IMT, which I put on here, you can see it. My IMT, have you guys seen these before? So it's an ultrasound that gives you thickness of the blood vessels, if there's any plaque, and the velocity in your carotid arteries. Lovely test. Anyway, my IMT, I was 54 when I got diagnosed. My IMT said I was 56. Post-chemo, I was 86. It took me to this year to get it to 62, and I'm 60. So I've gotten the cardiovascular inflammation down. But that's where naturopathy comes in. I was not offered an echocardiogram. I should have probably gotten an echocardiogram. Adriamycin kills the valves. I just got my echocardiogram in September. It looks pretty good. I also did a chest x-ray. I know I have to think about all these things, but my lung was burned from the radiation, so I wanted to see how much lung damage there was. I also do a bioimpedance test to find out what the inflammatory rate is and the lean body mass. So anyway, and my handouts 3, 4, and 5 all show you the baseline labs I do and what I expect from them. We don't need to look at them. Lesson 3, get support. You're only as healthy as the environment you live in. You all know that. So, big lesson for most of us is that we're overfunctioning. I really spend time with people saying what fills your cup, what's neutral, what drains your cup. Like my 4th week of chemo, my aunt died, and so I'm having to drive from Seattle to Portland. Not having to drive, let me reframe that. I chose to drive to Seattle to Portland, but I really thought about the amount of energy I would be putting out to do that and the outcome I would get from that. That's a whole different thing than shoulds. I've been getting rid of shoulds. That's my lesson. What I choose to do I choose to lecture here, was a big decision. Okay, because I feel like I would get my cup filled more than I would be drained doing this. That's my decision-making process. So, and what reserves do you have? I still mark out every 3rd Sunday on my calendar as pajama day. I don't get out of my pajamas. I binge watch Frankie and Gracie. I laugh. If you haven't seen that show, it's hysterical. And I do still not have energy to arrange things. To have your protective chi stripped like that, it's hard for me to reach out. I want you to know that. I tell my best friends, I miss you, I would love to see you, but can you just give me the option to say yes or no? Do I have to arrange it? On my 60th birthday, my daughter gave me, as a present, she's going to arrange a trip to Machu Picchu, and all I have to do is arrive. And we were supposed to go to Machu Picchu in the summer. I got diagnosed, so I got canceled, and there's no way I was going to go to elevation when I couldn't even climb the stairs of the symphony because I was so anemic, right? So now I can just arrive. That's great. I have a standing date with Roberta Mitchell every Thursday to go exercise and have dinner. I do this because she wouldn't exercise if I didn't do that. But that way, all I have to do is cancel. I don't have to arrange. You know that. It makes, if you have game night in your household every first Sunday of the month, it's so much easier than having to arrange something. So anyway. So similar to things that I learned as a midwife, get support, have a list of things that people can do to help. People all want to help. Everybody wants to help, and even thinking about the help you need is exhausting. So I'm giving you a list. There will be a chapter in my book about how you can help. People really want to cook. I didn't want to eat what they cooked, but I'm really grateful that they cooked because I could feed my family and support system. Okay? So I'm just telling you, they all want to know what to do. Set up the carrying bridge. Protect your support system. So this is another thing no one ever thought about. Here I am sitting on a toilet watching my urine go out the, in the 1970s when chemo first came in, we checked into the hospital with our patients. All their feces and urine was collected as a biohazard. It is not anymore. There's too many people. I'm sitting on the toilet watching Adriamycin, which is pink, going into the Puget Sound. So that made me wonder about intimacy with my husband and my mucous membranes, and nobody knew anything, so I called Lisa Oshwaller, and she said, of course you're off-gassing. I have a client who's had similar breast cancer and was sleeping in bed with her 2-year-old, and he's got horrible colitis. And I watched my husband get his bowels totally affected by being around me. My dog would have seizures when I'd come home that day. You are off-gassing really toxic metals. Really, really toxic. Protect the family. Put Austin air filters, take Epsom salt baths, but still get the love you need. So that's the balance, right? I don't want that mother to feel bad that she had to hold her 2-year-old. I feel the 2-year-old chose her as a mother knowing full well she was going to have breast cancer, and that was his own lesson. Okay, that's how I look at things. Arrange for as much treatment at home as you can. I did hydrotherapy 3 times a week. I could not have gotten in my car and drive to my office. So we actually have a hydrotherapy team in my office that we rent out the sine wave machines, and we have a hydrotherapy student group that does hydrotherapy for my cancer clients. Okay? Because the only time they should leave their house is when they go get the chemo. And I loved chemo day. I loved chemo day. They had me on so many drugs that I could actually go to chemo, go eat a huge meal at the Ethiopian restaurant, and sleep for 12 hours. Loved it. I did not sleep. I still don't sleep well because your body physiologically is frightened and can't sleep. It's every cell in the body is going, okay? So just thought I'd tell you. Arrange for treatments at home, food delivery, you can also get internet support. I used to run, one of my best friends was in Bastyr as a first-year student that year, and they were really discouraged with their naturopathic philosophy class, so I arranged for first-year students to come to my house once a week in groups of 8 to 10, and all they had to do was bring organic fruits and vegetables so I could juice. That was their payment. So they could watch a naturopath, because of course I was having treatment from September till June, and that's how I kept connected with my community. And I also told them they couldn't come over, they were sick. I also had somebody cleaning my house every week so I could keep my immune system from being suppressed. So how can people help? I had a dog. There's dog hair everywhere. You can come over and vacuum every week. That would be really nice. I don't have the energy to vacuum. Treatment. As a midwife, I learned that no birth is the same and that my role is to provide options so people feel empowered. Surgery is usually the first choice, but not always. Okay? So I had a client that came in with a 4-centimeter lump. She wanted to keep her breast. She was 36 years old. I told her I would stand by her until I thought she was crazy. I said I will be there and argue with her oncologist. And 6 or 7 months into treatment of her, all the things she was doing, which was overwhelming to her because she's a single mom with a 3-year-old, and the expense of all of this is so much that I finally said, your numbers are getting worse. The black salve's not working. I think that this lump needs to be looked at. And so she went and we found an oncologist that would do fractionated chemo. She kept her breast. She's cancer-free. She didn't do the surgery. So there's other options. You don't have to accept all that. So radiation is probably the worst thing I agreed to do. I'm just letting you know that. So if you've chosen surgery, the physician wants to know the prognosis. You want to know the clean borders. You want to know how many lymph nodes. You want to consider reconstruction if not. So that was a hard decision. I miss my breast. I'm going to tell you, I really miss my boob. I had 3 lymph nodes out of 17. That's really good. But I had 1 lymph node that was under my sternum, which they don't surgically remove, which was the reason for radiation for me. And then I went and talked to all the construction. I just wanted to explore reconstruction. So I'll leave that. If you have radiation, you're not eligible for implants because you don't have the vascular system. So if I had reconstruction, they would cut my transverse abdominal muscle on the right side, thread it up through my chest wall, and build a boob out of it on my left side. Okay, I've done all this fascial work to have full extension of my arms. I am not going to cut my transverse abdominal muscle, but I'm also not 25 years old. Okay? And I have to tell you that my husband's a gambler. We would spend a lot of time in Las Vegas. I was in tears for 3 years watching all the tits and ass that are down there. I love my cleavage. The other thing I want you to know is that I've had many people have bilateral mastectomies as a preventative thing. They don't tell you 2 things. 1, you remove both nipples and you remove an erogenous zone. It affects your sexual life. Okay, so I've had many women say, please tell people to keep their breasts. The second thing is that my oncologist wants me to keep my right breast because the diagnostic tool is my right breast. I found my breast cancer. Nobody else did. The mammogram didn't. The thermography didn't. My knowledge of my breast tissue, my prevention is this boob. I'm keeping this boob. So these are other things that people consider. Are you leaving skin flaps for reconstruction? I had one patient that chose to do that, and 20 years later, she never got reconstruction, and her chest wall looks funny because of it. She has skin flaps, so they have extra skin. So the 3 options are implant, skin flap, transverse abdominal constriction, or they take the latissimus and fold it over. Oh, it's pretty amazing what they can do. I have a handout on surgery preparation for surgery. It's on your thing about things I do to help people heal from surgery. The use of oncology medicine with the naturopathic philosophy. So many people criticize my choices. I'm not joking. Okay, I mean, I'm going through something. I'm limbic, right? Because I'm scared. And I'm getting shit from the naturopathic community about my choices. It's my choice. We should support my choice, okay? Like cures light, so Lisa Oshweiler and I finally got to this point where it's like, well, it's equal force, it's naturopathic. And I prayed with each treatment that it would go, comes from a First People's strategy. I would ask the medicines to go where they're supposed to go and not hurt me, and I think that's really important. I think that's another bing. I think I have less side effects than anybody. And then the choices are there and you have to support your patient or client on what their choices are. There are many types of chemo, but the basic principle is that it interrupts cell mitosis and hopefully faster than the cancer cells. As my oncologist kept telling me, he was really nearly killing me. He kind of reminded me that all the time. It's poison, and it's going to take poison to apply naturopathically, and do not interfere with it. So the day you're doing chemo, this is a basic principle. If the patient is choosing to have chemo, then don't give them stuff that's going to interfere with the chemos, what you're trying to do with the chemo. So don't do any antioxidants on the day of the chemo, and the chemo's out of your system in 72 hours as a basic principle. Okay? So when I'm doing CoQ10, I didn't do it the morning of the chemo. I had chemo on Tuesdays. I really did love Tuesdays. I was very sick by Thursday. So I had chemo on Tuesdays. I had hydrotherapy and acupuncture on Wednesday to mitigate the side effects. I had craniosacral on Thursday. I had another hydrotherapy on Friday. And I started my supplements again on Saturday. Okay? It's also damaging your kidneys. All of this is damaging your kidneys. So I didn't drink coffee, although I'm a coffee drinker. I would have coffee, 1 cup of coffee on Sunday so I could have a bowel movement. Great application of a poison in order to have a bowel movement. This is what a chemo setup looks like, because many of you don't see this. So those are 3 different drugs that are going into you. Most of them, the chemo session would take 3 hours. 1.5 hours of it is preparatory stuff of drugs you're taking in order to be able to take the chemo. Right? Prednisone and, all that kind of stuff. But I thought you should see this. There's me wandering around with I go to the bathroom because I drank so much. This is me getting the injection of the adriamycin. So 17 days after you start chemo, most women lose their hair. I shaved my hair on day 15. Why? Because it was stressful to wake up in the morning with wads of hair on your pillow. Please try to get them to try to reduce the stress that goes on in their lives. You only heal in parasympathetic. Okay? I used to say stuff like, I'd love to see myself bald without chemo. Okay. It's like Les Griffith and I were talking this morning. Is it a joke that, okay, the midwife gets breast cancer? And I'd say stuff like, I want to go to my grave with all my body parts. Right? That kind of thing. I also got filmed for King 5 News because I called the environmental reporter and said, this is going into our sound, and this is why we're having, all these drugs are going into the Puget Sound. You wonder why we have altered seafood, right? I actually got emails going, if you're so protective of the sound, why are you doing the drugs? You should just not do it. I was like, oh, you gotta be kidding. Don't you have better things to do with your life? So I do want you to know that there's 4 things that every one of your clients should be doing, which is in the principles of naturopathic medicine anyway, but these are linearly associated with breast cancer prevention. 1, your vitamin D levels. Jared talked about getting outside. Vitamin D levels should be 50 to 70. In the midst of my treatment, of course, mine was over 110, and I'm like, ooh, because I have osteoporosis, so I had to back down because you could cause kidney stones with that. But a half an hour of exercise every day, that's minimal. 5 to 7 cups of vegetables, I'll talk to you about that, and 20 milligrams of melatonin. So that's good sleep. But that level of melatonin is not a hormonal level. That's an anti-inflammatory level. Sleep is anti-inflammatory. You can only heal in parasympathetic, right? And these are things that allopaths actually are talking about because it's linearly associated with the prevention of breast cancer. So grief. This is when I started crying, you guys. I'm not going to cry now. I loved my breast. Okay? I am supposed to move on to poisoning myself when I just lost a body part. These are the things that I thought about. I miss my breast still and cry while I write this. So I walk through by a mirror and it doesn't bother me as much, you do, but I miss my breast, okay? I remind myself they fed my children and they contained my cancer and I would rather have breast cancer than colon cancer. That's what I tell myself. It is easier, but it's hard to go places with lots of cleavage and pass a mirror, and I cry in the bathroom a lot. And I want to reiterate, preventative bilateral mastectomy I do not recommend. I used to say I wanted to go to my grave with my body parts. Just thought I'd tell you that. All of you who know me know that Molly has a 5-point health plan. I changed my 5-point health plan to actually grading people when I came back from cancer because people want measurable outcomes. So you're going to grade yourself. I'm looking, and I changed it recently from grade point average to a health point average. Don't you love that? So give yourself an A for water. If you drink 1/3 of your body weight in fluid ounces a day in water, and 8 ounces for every vice. So when I have coffee, I fill it up with water. The other thing for naturopaths, if you drink 8 ounces of water and you pee within the hour, you're not absorbing it. So I'm just, you start with how much water you have, but if you pee it off, you're not absorbing it. So give yourself a grade for that. Diet. You need 3 servings of protein a day the size of the palm of your hands and 5 to 7 cups of vegetables. I did not get an A on this. 5 to 7 cups of vegetables, a lot of vegetables. So I now do a green smoothie every morning. And when I was going through treatment, I was juicing because Mary Bove sent me a juicer and realized my worm bin was getting more fiber than I was. So I changed to blending. I think the biggest issue I have found is that we need 40 grams of fiber a day minimally, because that removes, it was Joe Pizzorno 3 years ago, I heard him speak and he said, the body mobilizes poisons into your colon and the way it comes out is with fiber. I added up my fiber because I'm kind of low on carbs. I don't eat beans and grains very often. It's hard to get 40 grams of fiber unless you're really thinking about it. So I bet if you add up your fiber, 4 grams for every cup of, basically 4 grams for every cup of vegetables, 6 grams for a regular piece of fruit, 6 to 8 grams for a cup of cooked grains or brown, beans. Not a lot of fiber. Sleep, still an issue for me. A good night's sleep, you fall asleep within 20 minutes of lying down and sleep uninterrupted for 7 to 8 hours. How many of you get an A? Exercise. I think we need an hour of exercise every day. That whole thing that we grew up with, 3 times a week, that's already been debunked, you all know that. And then supplements. So I think everybody should be on a good multiple omega-3 oils, vitamin D, and probiotics, and that's a minimal for me. So that's what a 4.0 is. So I grade people because I'll say, look, you're a 2.4, and now you're a 3.5, and you feel 30% better because you're taking care of yourself. It's a great tool. I'm telling you, this is a great tool. I then move on to the 5 elimination channels, which you all know, but I don't do extensive detox, so people are putting poisons in. I do protection. You don't kick a dog when they're down. Okay? I didn't start I did 1 colonic in the middle of radiation after I finished chemo, and I regretted it forever. I was so sick. And I did 1 Thai massage, which does a lot of lymphatic drainage. I was so sick. I was not ready for that. Okay? So that's all pretty simple. I consider naturopathic medicine to be a table. I am the doctor of analogies. Have you learned this yet? So there's 4 legs to our table: nutrition and nutritional support, physical medicine, energy medicine, and botanicals. And I make all my clients, I make all my students, I make everybody tell me what 4 legs of the table are they addressing, whether they give them or not. I want every student in my practice to pick a homeopathic remedy, whether we give it or not. I want them to tell me what they're doing in physical medicine. We just did some peat last night, so at our office. things that were said to me. This is where I really want you to hear. So the first one that I heard from Pam Snyder is you can only, I'm not going to say the bad ones, I'm going to tell the good ones. I'm not going to say who told me the bad thing. You can only heal in parasympathetic. That was really powerful to me. One of our colleagues who had breast cancer said to me, and I know she was trying to be supportive, but it's not so bad. I continued working through it. I ended up in tears on the third AC to my husband going, how does she work? It's like, I mean, I was trying to hold myself up to that standard. Be careful what you say to people. Everybody's different. Never give this kind of encouragement until you know what the patient's system is capable of. Later on, I talked to her months later and said, this is how it affected me. She goes, I had to work. I had to get the insurance. That's different. Okay? I didn't have to work. And I was thinking I was having a worse time because I couldn't have possibly worked. Ask yourself, to your client, whoever is doing this, I do a lot of naturopathic care. I am the doctor's doctor. I'll say, are you giving good care to your patients? While you're in treatment, can I be a good doctor? That's not fair. I mean, what they can't do for themselves. So one thing we have an advantage of is I can tell every doctor I see, what would you tell a patient? Hold the mirror up, right? Okay, so this was another funny one. So we have these things called revivals in Seattle that the students do, and I showed up that summer, a year after treatment, and one of the naturopaths came up to me and said, well, how's your white blood cell count doing? And I said, oh, it's 2.8. And he said, oh, well, I've seen it. It'll never get higher with the kind of treatment you have. Those were fighting words. My white blood cell count is 5.4, thank you very much. Okay? I have no neuropathy, none. Okay? My white blood cell count is fine. So I called him up and gave him the hell. I sent him a copy of my lab saying, don't do this. We're supposed to be supportive of people. Don't do that to people. So upon returning to my homeopath for a remedy, he told me, and I never went back to him after this, he told me that if I kept up my constitutional treatments, I may not have gotten breast cancer. Now, I know he was trying to be loving, but it wasn't effective. I still got remedies all through it. I mean, I went and got somebody else, but that wasn't safe for me. I was not safe. At a Northwest convention 3 years ago, this is the other thing I want to tell you. I was talking, this is the first convention I came to. That was the one that, what's his name? Dietrich Klinghardt. I showed him a picture of me bald, and I said, God, I look like Elmer Fudd. He goes, no, you look like a Tibetan monk. Thank you. Thank you. I did look like Elmer Fudd, but anyway. Or Adams, that guy from, Anyway, so a naturopath who was knowledgeable in the oncology, like we have the American College of Naturopathic Obstetricians. There's a college for oncologists. And one of those doctors came up, and I could tell him what my diagnosis was, and you could see his face go, oh. I mean, it was like death. I'm going to die. Because I really do have a very serious diagnosis. And I need people to understand that, because what I have to say is very powerful then. But that was scary for me. I went up to my room and started crying. So I just want you to know that. Humor. Upon hearing it, so I have to acknowledge my partner of 20 years. Because if you read my Caring Bridge, you will laugh at everything he said. That's what he did. He just made jokes. So upon about hearing my breast cancer, my brother said to my partner, I hear you're a boob man and you're not going to leave my sister. He said, yes. Have you seen her ass? Laughter is imperative. Absolutely imperative. We were watching some reality. I tell you, I watched every Hallmark movie that week. I watched every Christmas thing anyway, we were watching this special on, they have reality shows for everything. This is a reality show repossessing Learjets. And, yeah, and my husband grabbed he said, they were repossessing Learjets in Wyoming in the Teton Mountains, and he put one hand on one breast and said, Teton, teet off. Recently, one of my clients that just got diagnosed 2 weeks ago came back to me, and she was interviewing surgeons. And the surgeon said to my client, when she said she didn't want to do radiation after surgery because she had a stage 1, he said, why do you ask? He said, I guess you're an adult and can make that decision. Very condescending. She didn't go back to him. Okay, so we're going to run through this because 10 minutes. I want to give you time for appointments, for questions. So ongoing treatment, what I still suffer from, fatigue. I don't have any neuropathy. Oh, I have a funny story, though. So I did get advice to take 500 milligrams of glutamine 3 times a day, and I read the advice wrong. And I was taking 1,500 milligrams of glutamine 3 times a day, which I was hesitant to do anyway because Bill Mitchell hates glutamine. I'll just tell you that because it's part of MSG and his neurological stuff. But anyway, I came home. I was like, oh my God, the chemo's going everywhere. I'm so anxious. And I had tingling sensation. I realized I'd overdosed myself on glutamine. So your hair falls off. There's me. Don't I look cute? I want you to conserve their energy. You can read through this. Let's see, 3 basic types. So I always define to my clients the 3 basic types of fatigue. Fatigue with exertion is anemia, like you're climbing stairs and you're winded. I tried B12 shots. They worked well. But the bottom line is they would make me run up the stairs, feel great, and then I'd crash. So I stopped doing it because that's hard on the immune system when you do this to the adrenal glands. If someone's crashing between 5 and 7 o'clock at night, that's their thyroid, and people getting radiation are affected by their thyroids, and the adrenal glands are the most important. So I have a handout on adrenal stress and steroid metabolism there. Okay, omega-3 oil is imperative. Radiation, I wanted to get to this. So radiation was the scariest thing for me. You're taking Hiroshima levels of radiation and putting them through your body. Of course, that's inflammatory. Okay? And I got 13 to 15 minutes of radiation because I had it in my nipple. So they actually put plastic over my breast. Most people get burns as a byproduct of the radiation. They were actually burning my tissues. So I had 3rd and 4th degree burn. I would wake up at night and my skin would be melted down my body. That was really awful. I want you to know that so here's another thing, a little pearl. They tattoo you and they treat you like a piece of meat when they tattoo you. So you've got to tell the patient to say, could you imagine being these people who have to do this over and over again? Of course they get kind of callous because they have to. But get your client to say hello. Hi, my name is Molly, and I know you're going to have to move me around, but could you at least interact with me as a human being instead of a piece of meat as I'm being thrown in this machine to be measured? Okay, these are the things. And they tattoo you and I say, could you put that a little lower so it's not stuck in what little cleavage I have? I have a big blue mark right here in the middle of my chest that didn't I want you to do your job. And my radiation oncologist is a Harvard nerd, and I love him because of that. That's what and I had a Toma machine, which does circular radiation to try to avoid my heart and lungs. There are different radiations. Just because they're in the Swedish system doesn't mean that, I had somebody at the U that has a breast cancer over a left breast and they were going to do direct radiation. I said, no, go to the Toma machine, avoid your heart and lungs, okay? This is the plastic they put over my skin. That's me 3 weeks after radiation. So yeah, your nails turn black, okay? All my toenails on my fingernails turn black. So you're done with treatment. You have a question about aromatase inhibitors. This is my biggest issue right now. The reason that these are working is because they block the hormones. How I look at it is it's blocking the hormone when I clean up the mess so I don't have dirty hormones. But I just got research that showed that just like taking somebody off birth control pills, they're finding that we live longer when we're on these drugs, but when it comes back, it doesn't increase our life because it makes the treatment, if it comes back, much more deadly. We don't respond. So every time I did a treatment, by the way, I researched what I wanted. I looked at what my insurance would pay for, and I got muscle tested. And none of those people knew that I was doing this, and it always agreed. So I'm going to muscle test for aromatase inhibitors again. And I have bone loss, 38% bone loss from the aromatase inhibitors, which is now down to 22% without taking Fosamax. Okay? I don't take Fosamax. I take here's another product, one more product, Ostinol, O-S-T-I-N-A-L. And I showed it to my oncologist, and he said, oh my God, it works, models bone under the estrogen modeling. So it models that bone. And he goes, what are you doing? I'm not taking your Fosamax. He told me I couldn't ski if I didn't take Fosamax. I said, you don't get that choice. You know. I'm going to stop because I want to give you a few moments to ask whatever questions you want, because my notes are pretty good. Anybody have any questions? And you can reach me. I answer the phone.
Thank you. That was enjoyable to listen to and very inspiring. Can you tell me if you know that for a woman with triple negative breast cancer, if preventive chemotherapy
What was the negative?
estrogen, progesterone, and HERS negative,
Triple negative.
triple negative, BRCA positive, is preventive chemotherapy of any value?
I would probably muscle test her. There's a lot of research that shows it's not of any value. Mm-hmm. That's the problem.
And in a circumstance like that, in terms of preventive mastectomy, do you still believe it's important to keep? She's had one breast removed. Would you advise?
Each individual decision is. So, do you have cancer from lack of a breast? You know, that's the question. Like,
Yeah.
Are you depressed from lack of Prozac? So, if you cut off the breast, you need to be thinking about, okay, what's causing that situation and how are we going to change that? And maybe that'll give us some breathing time. If a woman worries about it all the time, she's going to get cancer. So do something that's relieving her worry. Really important.
Right.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Great. I'm grateful to be here. I just want you to know that. On all sorts of levels.